My daily take, published over at HartmannReport.com this morning, is titled Vanishing Protesters, How Trump's ICE is Silencing the Next Generation. This is the story of a guy named Mahmoud Khalil, who was born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria. Talk about a rags to riches story, a success story. This brilliant young man got a job at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, and a scholarship to the Lebanese American University, where he got his undergraduate degree in computer science. Then he moved to New York and got into Columbia University and got a graduate degree from Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. He's married to an American citizen who is 8 months pregnant. He has committed no crimes, although there have been a couple of apparently kind of hardcore Netanyahu supporter types associated with Columbia University who've been agitating for his arrest. Well, that's what happened over the weekend. The ICE officials, this is now, I've been telling you this for 2 years now, or actually for 5 years now, that ever since they showed up here in Portland without uniforms, snatching people off the streets and putting them in vans and hauling them off, that ICE is Trump's Gestapo, his private police. And they snatched him. And this was, by the way, this was the day after he sent a letter to Katrina Armstrong, who's the acting president of Columbia University. Apparently, she had just met with somebody from Israel who was complaining about, student protests. And he sent her a note on March 7th. He was snatched on March 8th. He said, "Since yesterday, I've been subjected to a vicious, coordinated, and dehumanizing doxing campaign." And he names the Columbia affiliate, the guys at Columbia who he says were trashing him. He says, "They've labeled me a security threat and called for my deportation." He said their attacks have incited a wave of hate, including calls for my deportation and death threats. He says, "I haven't been able to sleep. I'm fearing that ICE or a dangerous individual might come to my home. I urgently need legal support, and I urge you to intervene and provide the necessary protection to prevent further harm." Columbia University ignored this. Now, as I said, this guy has not been even charged with a crime. To quote Ann Coulter, yes, that Ann Coulter, who tweeted about this yesterday or the day before, she said, quote, "There's almost no one I don't want to deport, but unless they've committed a crime, isn't this a violation of the First Amendment?" Yes, Ann, it is. The First Amendment is unambiguous. It says, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances." And it's not like they just kind of threw this thing in there like, oh, what the hell, let's just create a First Amendment, right? This is what George Washington said. "If men are to be precluded from offering their sentiments on a matter which may involve the most serious and alarming consequences that can invite the consideration of mankind, reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." Yeah, here we are. Or Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin said, "Freedom of speech is a principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of a free society is dissolved, and tyranny is erected on its ruins." But Donald Trump was having none of that. If you speak out in ways that he does not like, he wants you punished brutally. He went on his Nazi-infested social media site and said, "ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. This is the first arrest of many to come." Yeah. His crime, Khalil's crime, appears to have been being a negotiator between some of the more radical students and the university, trying to achieve a peaceful resolution to this. Keep in mind, this is a guy who's got a master's degree in this kind of thing from, Columbia's School of International Studies. The New York Times reports, they quote this Joseph Hawley, who's a classics professor at Columbia, who's known Khalil for a couple of years. And he says, He said, this is someone who seeks, he called him a consummate diplomat, and brave yet mild-mannered and gentle. He said, this is someone who seeks mediated resolutions through speech and dialogue. This is not someone who engages in violence or gets people riled up to do dangerous things, so it's really disturbing to see that kind of misrepresentation of him. But this is what dictatorial regimes always do. They don't want students protesting. Back in the 60s, I got arrested protesting against the war in Vietnam. Louise and I were active participants and Students for a Democratic Society, and many of the protests at Michigan State University. I continue to believe that the reason the war in Vietnam was actually ended, when and how it was because students were in the streets. But that's just the beginning. I mean, the SNCC protest, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, against the segregated lunch counters, SNCC was, one of the leaders of this thing, led directly to the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Students. The free speech movement at UC Berkeley. Remember Mario Savio? I mean, you have to be a certain age, I suppose. This inspired, student free speech movements across the world. Greta Thunberg's Fridays for Future movement has sparked youth protests across the planet. The Soweto uprising of 1976, these were black South African students protesting against apartheid. It so upset Elon Musk's family that he left the country, right? Presumably. The Iranian student revolution in 1979. Now, it led to the Shah leaving the country. The result wasn't exactly what everybody was hoping for. Well, maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say. But the students did this. The 1989 Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, which led that country to a peaceful transition to democracy, led by students. The Hong Kong Umbrella Movement, led by students in 2014. Now, ultimately, it was crushed. But, the Tiananmen Square movement, for that matter, was led by students. I mean, even Richard Nixon, the wannabe fascist, didn't consider arresting and deporting students. I mean, yeah, they came after us. They came after us mostly with drug laws, but, it wasn't like this. I mean, we are
standing on the verge of a very different form of government if Donald Trump gets away with this. Now, this case was appealed before a federal judge in New York, and or perhaps it was D.C., and that judge is going to be ruling this week. I believe that they have until Friday. I could be wrong. I'll have to track that down, but it's this week to decide whether or not they can deport this guy. Because he's got a green card. He's a permanent resident. It's really hard to get a green card. There's 13 million people in this country with green cards. More people with green cards than, quote, illegal immigrants. And once you've got a green card, you can basically only have it revoked if you commit an actual crime and are convicted of it. And he not only has not committed a crime, he hasn't even had a court process. So are students going to find the courage to take to the streets like we did in the 60s? Is Trump going to go after student protesters next who are American citizens? Will any elected Republicans find the spine, the courage, or the principles to defy this takedown of the work that our founders fought and died for?